What's going on, y'all? I'm Kelly Mitchell, and this is Black History for Youngsters. What's up, y'all? Today we talking segregation. What is it? Segregation in America was laws and practices that tried to keep white people and black people separated. Some history or whatever. Even though segregation had been around since after the slaves were freed, in 1896, the Supreme Court ruling of the popular case, Plessy versus Ferguson, was the event that popped off the modern-day segregation that we know and love so much. The court ruling said that segregation was legal and could be legislated, which meant that the government could make laws to segregate or separate black people and white people in different social public places, such as libraries, schools, hospitals, public transportation, pools, and even water fountains, as long as those separate places were equal in quality, which now we know that they will not be, but we'll get to that part later. This case is where the phrase separate but equal came about, and this is also the beginning of segregation de jure, or segregation by laws. After this ruling by the Supreme Court, up pops different laws dealing with restricting black people from voting. One law created for this purpose was the poll tax. This was put in place because some states' governments didn't want black people to vote, and they knew that black people wouldn't be able to afford the tax that they had to pay in order to be able to vote. There were also literacy tests where you had to take tests and prove you were smart enough to vote. These voting restrictions were big because if black people couldn't vote, then their interests wouldn't be served. They wouldn't be able to have people like them, or at least people that agreed with them in government offices, to help speak for them and make laws that would help them. This was one of racist white people's ways of trying to silence black people and keep America as a good place for white people and white people only. After Plessy versus Ferguson, this is around the time where in southern states like Texas and Louisiana, Alabama, where we start to see Jim Crow laws or segregation laws come about. Kind of like this one in Alabama that said, no person or corporation shall require any white female nurse to nurse in wards or rooms in hospitals, either public or private, in which Negro men are placed. So nurses could not be required by anybody or any business to provide medical care to a black man. Or like this law in Florida that said, the schools for white children and the schools for Negro children shall be conducted separately. Now, all this bad stuff was going on in the South, but even though it was a little different, there was segregation in the North too. Check out this law in Maryland. All marriages between a white person and a Negro, or between a white person and a person of Negro descent to the third generation, are forever prohibited and shall be void. So a marriage between a white person and a black person, or a person that had black in them, was illegal and not even recognized in the state of Maryland. In the North, there was segregation, but it was more of segregation de facto, or segregation by factual circumstance. So the segregation in the North was more of situations like the unfair treatment of black people in banks. There was job discrimination where black people weren't hired for some of the same jobs that white people were hired for. And there was segregation in housing policies, which, if y'all remember, we already talked about in that redlining video. And if you didn't watch it yet, that video is linked in the description. But with the segregated housing policies, black people and white people had to live in separate communities, with white people's communities being better than black people's communities, and with white people being able to own their homes and property. So segregation was everywhere, and it had taken America by storm. We were legally divided as a nation. What happened to it? In 1948, President Harry S. Truman wrote up two executive orders. Executive Order 9980, which desegregated the federal workplace, and Executive Order 9981, which desegregated the armed forces. These executive orders made it legal for black and white people to work together in federal government jobs, such as nursing and being a correctional officer. And it made it possible for black and white people to be in the United States Armed Forces together. This helped to start a movement that would get rid of segregation in America. After this, the Civil Rights Movement came to be, and it pushed the government to change segregational laws with nonviolent protests, boycotts, and the work of the NAACP, or the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Some of the laws that were changed were school segregation laws, voting rights laws, and segregation by law. School segregation law changed. In the court case Brown versus Board of Education that happened in 1954, only 68 years ago, the NAACP represented Oliver Brown and won the case with a Supreme Court ruling that said even though they were supposed to be, because of the ruling of Plessy versus Ferguson that we talked about before, black schools were in fact not equal in quality to white schools. So the Supreme Court decided to break that segregation barrier and allow black students to go to white schools. This was a big case that helped to put an end to segregation. Voting rights laws
changed.
In 1965, only 57 years ago, with the protest and the civil rights underway, President Lyndon B. Johnson dropped the Voting Rights Act, which made it legal for the federal government, which is the part of the government that can tell the states what to do, to babysit the state governments during voting times to make sure that they didn't try to put any voting roadblocks in black Americans' way, like they used to with the taxes and the tests, so that now black Americans could vote fairly and their voices would be heard. And segregation by law
changed.
The big boy came in 1964, only 58 years ago, when President Lyndon B. Johnson dropped the Civil Rights Act of 1964. This banned discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. It banned unequal application of voter registration laws, and it banned racial segregation. The whole thing. In schools, workplaces, and public places. After these laws passed, the segregation laws in the South and segregation as a whole started to slowly die in America. Positives. During this period of segregation, black people came together and it was beautiful. They were together protesting and letting their voices be heard in order to get the rights that they knew they deserved. We can always get things done when we work together, but it shouldn't take segregation for us to be able to walk in unity. Hands on. Since segregation was such a short time ago, ask your older family members, teachers, or people you go to church with that lived during that time what it was like to experience segregation. They may have some interesting stories to tell you. Well, y'all, that's segregation. Stay tuned and see what we drop next week.